If you're new to watercolor painting, you may not realize that watercolor paper is one of the actors in your painting. It is very critical to what your painting ultimately turns out to be. So, in your watercolor journey, when you realize that it's the watercolor paper that's doing most of the painting for you, that becomes a turning point for an artist. So, there are a few simple experiments that I do before I start a painting that help me choose which paper to go forward with. So I'm going to do exactly same brush strokes first on the cold press paper and then on the hot press paper so that you can see the difference. So going after the cold press paper first. So we're going to do some straight brush strokes. Some tiny leaves. Let me do that about the same thing. I'm trying to be as consistent as possible on the hot press paper. And right off the bat, hot press paper is so smooth. And honestly, I've said that so many times. I love the hot press paper. It's one of my, actually it's my favorite paper, the Arches hot press, because it's so smooth. You know, the brush just glides through it. And as it dries, you'll see the difference. Now this is just evaluating the straight brush strokes. So if I'm planning a painting, I would first try it on both papers and see, which one makes me happier, because each subject is different, each plant is different, and sometimes how you want to render a particular painting, that's different too. So it depends on many things on which paper would give you the best results. So the other experiment that I do is how the color would disperse in clean water. So and it depends on the pigment as well. Not all pigments will disperse in the same manner. So if I were using bright rose versus sap green, the dispersion would be different. If I'm using Daniel Smith versus Holbein, the dispersion would be different. So this is sap green from Holbein. And let me drop some of one of my favorite colors, which is the yellow ochre. And see the difference. So if you look at this leaf versus this leaf, the dispersion was much faster, and the hot press paper, it kind of like puddles up. And that's what I like about hot press paper. This puddling up really steals my heart. So many times I just end up choosing hot press over the cold press. Let's try olive green as well. As you can see, olive green is very dense, and it on the hot press paper, it just stays in one spot. It doesn't go anywhere. And versus on cold press, you see that it has, even if it was saturated, dispersed quite a bit. Let's also do a plain wash and see. So I'm mixing a wash now. Something that I don't do very often. I mean, I don't do too many washes, but let's try and see that. So this is a plain wash. The plain wash tends to do very well on cold press. So if you have a painting that you're going to use plain washes for, cold press might be a good choice. So I'm going to show you how it dries, because part of the experimentation is you wait to see what it looks like after it has dried, because the character might just change and your opinion will change once you see how it has dried out. If you're using granulating colors, then it's also worth a experiment between the hot press and the cold press. So let's take a look at one of the granulating colors, heavily granulating colors, Potter's Pink. Here's the mass tone, and on cold press it would behave very different. Take a look here. Now let's take a look at the hot press. The other thing that hot press does is it dries out very quickly. So it does require a little bit more focus. So to see how it disperses on hot press, it is a little bit more clumpy, and that's just part of the beauty. I'm going to try the hot press would reveal the brush strokes very clearly. So it also, and that's the reason why if we make a mistake on hot press, it is unforgiving. But at the same time, if you do things right, it rewards you heavily. So that's just hot press for you. Now let's take a look at a little bit of dry brushing. So I have very little water. So although this is granulating, there wasn't much difference, but it's pretty nonetheless. And if I do the same thing on cold press, it just, if you have less water, it's the stroke won't go through sometimes, and that becomes a mistake. And I mean, that can be a good thing if you are adept with it, but it can also backfire. Let's try with another pigment, not a granulating pigment. Potter's Pink is it's not very, the mass tone is very hard to get on the brush. So let's take a look at Olive Green, which is a much smoother pigment. So now this is very dense, and I don't have much water. And on hot press, it's smooth as butter, and you can see on cold press it it spreads very evenly. It gives you this beautiful, even, dense look. But oh, I'm sorry. So I'll do it one more time for hot press. It's trying to get the master on here. Yeah, so if you look at hot press, it's smooth as butter. And if you look at cold press, it got the mass tone much better, but the hot press didn't. But it has a very unique character to it. So yeah, it just depends on your choice. If you compare the two, in my mind, they're not even close. Like if I were to choose cold press versus hot press, I would get two different paintings. So that's what I wanted to demonstrate to you. And also, um, as I've said many times, I have a bias to the hot press paper, but it's a personal choice. So I hope you found this useful, and now we would go on to my painting for today, which is the African lily, or the crimson flag, or the other name is the river lily. And I'm choosing the hot press paper for it. And let's see how that turns out. So I'm glad to be back, and I took a quick trip to India to see my family. And in this trip, I decided not to paint and just spend time with my father and my sisters. So, uh, hence, you see a gap in the videos. And it's been about 4 weeks that I didn't post anything. But regardless, I'm glad to be back and to be painting again. And I painted this beautiful river lily, or the crimson flag. And this particular flower is not native to USA or even India. I just came across this photograph, and this is like a kind of a grass, and it has these lily-like flowers, and I was instantly captivated by it, and I decided to paint it. And I'm glad how it turned out. So let's take a look at the colors we used. For the reds, I used bright rose, and I mixed it up with vermilion hue. And like I've said in other videos, when we mix orange and pink, it gives this beautiful shade of an orange pink, which is otherwise not possible, but I see them so commonly in so many flowers. It almost seems like if I had to paint flowers, I have to somehow mix a pink and an orange to get the real flower-like colors in many cases. So this is one of those flowers, and that along with Crimson Lake, just for some dark edges. Crimson Lake. And those were pretty much the reds that we used, and then we used a couple of greens. The first one was the leafy green. For this painting, I went back to my palette in the beginning of the year, so a lot of those colors, in fact most of these colors, were something that I started with when I started this channel. And I go through this cycle of when I prefer certain colors at certain time, and then I deviate, and then I come back to them. So this is one of those times. So leafy green, which of course is a bright green and one of my favorites. And And I also use sap green. Again, a very rich green. You know, the true green in my opinion. Again, a green that I cannot do without. So sap green. And then for the dark edges, we used undersea green from Daniel Smith. Here we go, some mastone. This is also one of my go-to greens for anytime I need a dark green. So undersea green. And then for the base of the leaves, I also used some burnt umber. This is pretty much to show the dirt on the grass, you know, here and here, because of course it's grass, so the bottom of the leaf is going to be showing some soil stains. So that's why the burnt umber. And some Winsor Newton white ink for the stamens. Here we go. And that's about it. If you're new to watercolor painting, you may not realize that
I thought you were done, so I walked out.